夠人，合法人數亦都咧係夠鐘啦。咁我正式宣布。
I now call the meeting to order. We have attained the quorum. It is about time to make a start. After the last meeting, the Secretariat has issued some papers. I'd like to highlight two of them. The first one is the reduction of salt and sugar content in food, and there is a working report. The other one is mosquito control. They are supposed to be incorporated into the June meeting, but as we are aware, we are inundated with so many items for discussion. I'd like members to have a look at these papers. According to Secretariat, there are no questions raised since the issuance of these papers. So on this basis, do I understand that we don't need to take these two papers in the June meetings? All right? Okay, then. In relation to the June meeting, members are probably aware that in the list of outstanding items, there will be two items for which there will be a specific meeting. The first one is the liquor license, guidelines for assessing liquor license applications. The other one is the hawker policy. There will be a meeting scheduled for the 21st of June. So for the June regular meetings, there are three items. I'm referring to June the 11th, and they are the Sustainable Fisheries Development Fund, the review of the moratorium on issuing new fish culture licenses, outcome of consultation, and the proposed way forward, and number 3, rodent control. I like to hear members' views. All right, shall we invite the administration in as well, please? I'd like to put this to members. Yes, Chairman. Shall we wait for the administration to come in first? Well, I am waiting for you to have some discussion. Secretary and Permanent Secretary, we are discussing the agenda items for the June meeting. Mr. Wong Kwok Heng. Chairman, there is an important item I'd like to bring up for your endorsement. According to a newspaper report, there is a headline news about the fake fish gallbladder, and also the beef balls are available in the market. They don't contain any beef. They taste very chemically, and it is very horrible to have heard of that. So, Chairman, at the next meeting, perhaps we should ask the administration or the Center for Food Safety to submit a report to us regarding the details. It is an urgent issue. We visited the market today with the Secretary. Well, the Secretary is accompanying us, actually. Or it doesn't matter who is accompanying who. It is an important subject anyway. I agree. Right? Any comments, members? The beef, the fake beef balls, and the fish intestines, and so on. I've checked with the Secretariat for the June 11th meeting. We should have sufficient time for an additional item. So we will deal with them on June the 11th. We have regular meeting on June 11th. We have added an additional item, the fake food items. There are 3 more. The Sustainable Fisheries Development Fund, review of the moratorium on issuing new fish culture licenses, outcome of consultation, and the proposed way forward, as well as the rodent control. And on June the 13th, we will deal with the liquor licensing guidelines for assessing liquor license applications. Since the last meeting, I have received a letter from Ms. Helena Wong on the 27th of May about a superintendent being found guilty for corruption practices regarding the scrutiny of liquor licenses. Now, regarding these corruption practices, I don't think we should deal with this at this panel meeting. So she would just like to talk about the procedures for vetting the liquor licenses. And in fact, this falls under the liquor licensing guidelines and so on. So I don't think there would be any problems at all. So, Madam Wong, do you still want to invite the security panel members to attend as well? No objections. So I'll be inviting the security panel members. Right, why don't you invite all 70 members? Why do we have to invite the security panel members alone? It doesn't have much to do with the security panel. The liquor license is subject to a particular license. The liquor licensing board is a statutory body with its own power. The chairman of the liquor licensing board doesn't normally entertain our request to attend our meetings. Now, I can't see the point of inviting the security panel members. I think it would be a good idea for all the members to be invited. In particular, the district councillor, the super district councillors, and all these district people would like to impose a very stringent control. They almost would like to drive the liquor out of existence, and they went so far as to suggest that the liquor setting out should be no more than 30 minutes. So I think it would be a good idea to invite all of them. But if we have every one of us here, then it might be difficult for us to review the issuance of liquor licenses. We may have to be spending long hours. Ms. Helena Wong is not here. Well, she suggested the security panel. I think it has to do with the corruption practices. Now, since this corruption issue is not within this panel, we're not going to invite. We're not going to do anything about it. So we will, on the 13th, we will have a public hearing. On the 21st, we will talk about the hawker policy. So we will have the meetings on the 11th of June, 13th of June, and 21st of June. This afternoon, I'm grateful to the Secretary and his team for taking us to the 3 markets, Hygiene Street, Kowloon City, and now Tau Kok. I'm sure that the Secretary must have a very deep understanding of the situation. We're going to be visiting 3 markets on Hong Kong Island. The Secretary would like me to put it to members. At the 9th of July, it is our regular meeting. We will be informed of the policies regarding the public markets. Do we need to conduct another visit to the markets? We've been to Kowloon this morning, Hong Kong Island. We're going to be visiting on the 25th of July. And if you'd like to visit 3 more markets, now we have scheduled for the 2nd of July, a week before July 9th. So do we need to have another visit to the markets? Any comments?
Personally, I don't see a need because we have visited 3 markets in Kowloon and 3 markets in Hong Kong Island. We have visited old and new markets with air conditioning and without. This is my view. So any thoughts? So I will take this as a no. So we will not need to visit public markets again. So please be reminded that on the 25th of June, we will visit 3 markets in Hong Kong Island. So we have solved these questions before we move on to the next item on the agenda. So the first would be issues related to the implementation of the Import and Export General Amendment Regulation 2013. I believe the Secretary wants to make a brief introduction on this issue first. Thank you, Chairman. The amendment regulation came into force on the 1st of March. And we have heard a lot of valuable opinion from the subcommittee. In the next few months, we will work on the issue on powdered formula. And this has something to do with the supply chain, and the suppliers have to work on the supply chain to make sure the Hong Kong public can have access to a stable supply of powdered formula. We have met with the Hong Kong General Chamber of Pharmacy, and we urged them to improve their supply efficiency and make improvements to the supply chain. And we have asked them to put in more resources and enhance the hotline and puts in more staff to man the hotlines. And examine and set up services for advance order of powdered formula throughout the territory. And we also set up a panel with different representatives, academia, trade professionals. On the 10th of we will check if the measures are effective and sustainable, and after that we will consider repealing the provisions introduced by the amendment regulations. And in the past 3 months since the amendment was in force, the front line customs staff have accumulated a lot of experience, and the government has optimized a lot of details in the law in terms of law enforcement. The definition of powdered formula has reflected the scope of work of the authorities and the scope of monitoring. We have issued revised guidelines to customs and excise departments, and the enhanced guidelines have defined the definition of powdered formula, and the frontline staff are advised to make reference to the product descriptions and use instructions of the powdered formula products. We will also print new leaflets and distribute them to various visitors at boundary control points. And the pamphlet will provide examples to illustrate the scope, nature, and targeted consumers of the powdered milk formula. And we will also launch a trial scheme on powdered formula receptacles, and we will set up receptacles for the collection of powdered milk formula at Lowu and Lok Ma Chau spur line control points. And we will collect the powdered formula and donate them to people in need. After the scrutiny period, we will inform the relevant authorities. Now it's time for members to raise questions. On these issues, I think we will have a lot of questions. So we have 5 minutes each. Mr. Wong Kwok Heng, Vincent Fang, Tommy Chung. Thank you, Chairman. I have a few questions for the government. First, on the receptacles. There has been some time since I last asked this question. The authorities said they will be implemented shortly. So how much longer do we have to wait? It will be implemented in June. Another question is, according to some news reports, some people who are carrying powdered formula might have might have violated the amendments, amended regulations. In the implementation of the revised amendment, will you communicate with the frontline staff of customs and excise departments? Would you give them clearer guidelines so that they can implement, so that they can enforce the regulations more stringently? Would you implement the regulations in a more lenient manner? Some people might violate the regulations inadvertently, so we have to think about whether our enforcements are too strict. Will you perform stress tests on our supply chain? How long would it take? And when are we going to have results? And will the results be reported back to LegCo? Thank you, Mr. Wong. On the 24-hour issue, as we have explained before, The reason we have this amendment is we want to stop the loophole where people would enter and leave. Some members of the public might or might not be clear about this regulation. I believe our mechanism and law enforcement practices should be flexible. I didn't mean that we can finish the improvement works by October, and I don't know exactly when this would be done. However, we want to make use of the National Day holidays in October to perform stress tests. We hope the supply chain can be optimized before October. However, I want Mr. Wong to know that we're not saying that the supply chains can be optimized by October. We had a discussion earlier. Some members, the members have different opinion on the timeline, and we set the deadline of October because that's when the Golden Week lies, and it's a good time for us to conduct stress tests. How long would this take? I cannot say for certain at this moment. We are lining up consultants, and one of their main responsibilities is to design the methodologies of our stress tests. I will report on this at a later stage. Chairman, I hope the Secretary can the Secretary be lenient on the amendments in terms of law enforcement? I think we must be lenient. I am very concerned about this issue as well, and I did inquire about the progress. And I'm concerned about the law enforcement situation. Mr. Vincent Fang, Tommy Chung. Thank you, Chairman. On the powdered formula embargo, I think there is a problem with the supply chain. You made 4 requests to the suppliers, and you said that this would ensure a smooth supply of powdered formula. The powdered formula suppliers and retailers signed an agreement, and they agree that in cases of shortage, the suppliers would do what it takes to ensure a stable supply of powdered formula. Right now, the turnover of powdered formula is twice or 3 times a week, but after the agreement is signed, they will ensure that the supply is updated every day. Very soon, in the next 2 weeks or so, they will launch a scheme called Hong Kong People, Hong Kong Milk, where powdered formula can be obtained at every pharmacy, and Hong Kong people can obtain, they are guaranteed 5 tins of powdered formula a week. If they can agree on all these in their agreements, I think they can achieve what the 4 points you set up to do. With regards to the stress tests, the secretary must cancel, must not stipulate a specific time frame. They have to, I'm not sure whether why don't we test, do the test over the next few weeks? If we do not cancel the amendment, we can never conduct the tests.
Second, Mr. Secretary, you talked about the enhanced guidelines for the customs and excise. I'm wondering whether these can be made available to us. At least we can make it available to the retailers on the front line to make sure that everything is done properly. Secretary, 2 questions there. Well, let me answer this swiftly. I agree that they have put together this charter on a particular date, which I don't remember. It is a positive step. Well, for them to say that they're going to do this, it doesn't mean that it will immediately inspire confidence. And they will get in touch with the parent company. If there is a shortage, they will fly the products to Hong Kong. Now, the world over, everybody is scrambling for baby formula. In the UK, it is a case in point. Now, the daily delivery, I put a question to them which they couldn't answer. They had a certain number of manpower and fleet that they can deliver to the 1,800 retail outlets. If they make deliveries twice a week, have they increased the fleet of vehicles and manpower? Can they make deliveries every single day? And if they can achieve this, and now why couldn't they do so in the past? Now, the hotline, an increase of 50% capacity. Now, this is not sufficiently comfortable. The number of calls can range between 0 and a couple of hundred. We had the hotline. We know how many calls there can be coming through. Now, if there is a shortage, a 50% increase will not be sufficient. It can be a mere mention of 50% will not be acceptable to me. And we'll follow up on this again. But anyhow, this is a positive step on their part. But they should be able to cover as many retail outlets as possible. The stress test, I mean, it is difficult. That's why we have commissioned a consultant. Now, with the legislation in place, I cannot override the legislation. I cannot cast aside the legislation for 2 weeks. Now, with the stress test, we can do it even if the legislation is there. Now, nobody. I can give you 200 calls per day to assess the effectiveness. As regards the enhanced guidelines, it is an internal document. This cannot be disclosed. So that's why we are publishing a pamphlet for public consumption. Once this is available, we will provide this to everybody, including retailers. Mr. Fang, I'm afraid you have to wait your turn. again, Mr. Tommy Cheung and Mr. Raymond Chen. Chairman, we don't have severe shortage of baby formula. During the scrutiny period, the administration has explained to us in no uncertain terms that there is no shortfall at all. In Para 8, all the details are set out there. In fact, there is a lot of supply in the stock. I think the Secretary has very, very good command of rhetoric, which rivals that of the Chief Executive. And be that as it may, I don't agree that there is a shortage. Mr. Vincent Fang is very civilized, and he is pulling his punches. I mean, I am a little bit more rude, and I pull no punches from the restaurant sector. I mean, I pull no punches. Now, this time, you have created this whole mess, but your popularity rating has really risen. Even our handsome chairman cannot compare with you. Now, if you run for office in a direct election, then they will be in trouble. Now, let me put this to you, Mr. Secretary. Now, you talked about all these stress tests. I think it is it is superfluous. There will be no problem as long as you get the supply chain sorted out. We have all the stock here. Now, under these circumstances, I've got other questions. You have to make it quick, Secretary. After these stress tests, or whatever tests you call it, Mr. Vincent Fang said as long as you keep the legislation there, the stress test would be a success. Now, with the findings of the stress test, how soon are you going to lift this particular piece of legislation? Or are you going to wait for October 1st or the Chinese New Year, or May 1st next year, or September, October next year? You've got to be waiting all these months and days. So will you tell us whether there is any timetable here, Secretary? I'm grateful to Mr. Tommy Cheung. He is a good citizen, but I beg to differ. I don't think I'm resorting to any rhetoric. The people do have different opinions. I did say at one point that we didn't have any shortage. It's only the problem when it lies with the retail level. Now, it is all relative. Now, for the baby formula imported to Hong Kong, how much has been snapped up at the retail level? If there is a scramble for baby formula at the retail level, then would the stock be sufficient in Hong Kong? So that's why of the 4 points, I'd like to follow up on the first one, and that is the companies and the parent companies undertaking and the pledges. Second, we are going to conduct the stress test. If they pass the stress test and make us confident that the parents in Hong Kong will be able to purchase the baby formula, then it will not be difficult for us to lift the restriction. So it's all a question of whether we are happy with the stress test and whether we are relaxed about the situation as a result of the stress test. In fact, many people are telling me not to lift the restriction because they are concerned that once this is lifted, the parallel traders will be staging a comeback, and will we be able to make sure that Hong Kong parents would be able to get their share? Technically, to lift the restriction doesn't present any difficulties at all. It's just that whether we are happy with the findings of the stress test. Mr. Zhou. So are you working on the basis of the consultants' views about the stress test, or are you listening to the views of those who told you not to lift the restriction? Are you stalling the matter by imposing the stress test, or what? Well, we're serious about the stress test. That's why we commissioned a consultant. As to whether we can design the details, it's not impossible. I've got some ideas myself, but as far as the retail or the supply chain is concerned, we're no expert. So that's why we are commissioning a more neutral and independent consultant to design the details for us. All right, there are a couple of members. The next one is Mr. Raymond Wong. Mr. Tommy Zhang, do you mind standing in for me for a couple of minutes? Any objection? Mr. Raymond Wong, 5 minutes. On the 17th of last month, as we all know, we ran out of a quorum and the meeting was aborted. Some members blamed this on the filibustering members. It is a popular remark to make. They blame everything on the filibustering members. I think you have to be fair to us. The government could have presented the amendment to the Legislative Council, but you chose not to do so, and the blame was attributed to us. There were some reports that the government issued reminders that any paper submitted to EXCO should gauge the reaction of the mainland. I'd like to warn Mr. or Dr. Goh Wing Man with regard to the infant formula restriction. If we have to assess the mainland reaction, like in this, like Mr. 689 said, then I would not be happy about it, because you are really getting rid of Hong Kong people governing Hong Kong and Hong Kong's autonomy. I mean, don't blame me for being rude. I'm against this sunset clause. We cannot willy-nilly impose a date for rescinding this particular legislation, unless you're telling me that you can crack down on the parallel traders effectively. Here in this council, there are diverse views regarding the restriction. And let me say this to you. According to para 9 of the paper, there are a couple of measures to improve the supply chain, but you haven't told us the progress, Mr. Secretary. So I hope that the administration will tell us about the operation of the suppliers and whether there have been any improvements. 9D in particular, you have the pre-order, the advance order of powdered formula at retail outlets. I think this would enable the suppliers to gauge the demand, and then they would decide on the speed with which to replenish the stock. So what is the result and findings of this study? You don't just talk about it, tell us the results. Furthermore, I hope that the administration will tell us about the criteria for review. The government cannot merely measure whether the supply is sufficient. Once the restriction has been lifted, the demand will rise again. The government has to make sure that the supply chain will be able to meet the demand from locally as well as the parallel traders before you lift the restriction. I'm not merely talking about the demand from the parallel traders, because there is no way you can ban them. They're not breaking the law, but they can break up into smaller groups and get on with the parallel trading. That this problem will rear its ugly head all over again if you cannot guarantee that the supply chain will be able to meet the demand from locally as well as the parallel trading. So the administration said that the Census and Statistics Department has not conducted any assessment of the demand. Now, you've got 1 minute, and perhaps you might wish to give us a reply there.
Chairman, thank you for the question of Mr. Wang. As you may know, the improvement of the supply chain lies on the suppliers and retailers, and not the government. They have already started the work. I cannot tell you give you any statistics today. But all in all, we will report the latest figures here once they are available. And on the evaluation criteria, what are the satisfactory criteria? We're not saying that we are completely in the dark on the quantities required. In 2012, we had the quantity imported was over 40 million kilograms. We have within those 40 million kilograms, the parallel traders might have got hold of 3/4 of the supply. And this is why I'm very concerned about the agreements between the suppliers and their mother companies. For parallel traders, if the retail mechanism is very efficient and it can successfully guarantee that 10 million kilograms or so of milk powder falls into the hands of Hong Kong people, I think it's another issue if people are still not satisfied about parallel traders. Mr. Raymond Chen. A lot of people know I'm in favor of the restriction on milk powder. And the restriction on milk powder was passed, and people say that I'm pro-government. Some people say that I'm collaborating with Dr. Koh. I think this is not the case, and Dr. Koh didn't even thank me. On the other hand, perhaps Dr. Koh thought I'm a troublemaker. A lot of members ask why we did not raise the question again. If Dr. Koh sees this restriction on milk powder as a long-term policy, I think it's worthwhile to discuss the issue again. If it's a short-term policy which can be withdrawn once the situation improves, I think it makes sense. I think the restriction is very effective. As of now, we don't receive a lot of complaints from the residents that they cannot get hold of milk powder. Some people say that the implications of this restriction is still very strong. Well, I'm not going to discuss this today. On the agreement signed to ensure a stable supply of milk powder, is this still in force? Dr. Koh said it's technically not very hard to withdraw the restriction, But my concern is that in practice, it's very hard to withdraw the restriction. In name, the restriction is used to counter parallel traders, but in effect, we have seen an improvement in the situation. Dr. Koh said that once the stress tests are passed, we can withdraw this restriction. However, my concern is that whether the stress tests are successful relies solely on the retailers and suppliers. If they behave properly, we can certainly pass the stress tests. But afterwards, they can get back to norm. And has the Secretary considered these factors? Thank you for the question. Certainly, we have thought about these, and I have noted your concerns. And I do not think that the stress tests can be manipulated by the suppliers and retailers. We have to see, they have to show that they have taken action in order to pass the stress tests. For example, they have to manage the hotlines well. If they just say they are going to increase the manpower by 50% for the hotline, this is not acceptable to me. The hotline is just a contingency measure. In an ideal world, everyone would use the hotline to order their milk powder. However, we cannot manipulate the consumers. We cannot control their decisions. If people can buy milk powder easily at pharmacies, why would they use a hotline? And on the other hand, some people might use the hotline, and they would seek other solutions if they fail to get what they want via the hotline. It's not enough to increase the manpower by 50% to manage the hotline. In normal times, the hotline might not be very popular. What I mean is, when we have this restriction in place, will the retailers and suppliers behave as we want them to? But after the restriction is lifted, would they return to their old selves? We will look at what the suppliers and retailers have done behind the scenes. For the hotline service to hold up, they must train up their staff. But this hotline is just a self-imposed constraint by them. And after the restriction is lifted, what would you do? We will see if they are capable of deploying their manpower to pass the restriction. This is a mechanism. We cannot possibly know everything, but we can certainly see what the suppliers and retailers have done. I think what Mr. Chen means is that the supply chain is controlled by suppliers. Let's talk about this another time. Mr. Lo Wai Kwok, I'm not part of this panel. Everyone's very concerned with this restriction. Mr. Wong Kok Heng talked about the 24-hour issue. As you may know, part of the amendment was to change the terms from 24 hours to same-day entry for residents and tourists. If they want to bring two tins of milk powder across the powder, they have to know whether they have left and entered the border, crossed the border in the last 24 hours. Can we give us some statistics on the number of prosecutions, let's say in the last month or so, because of this 24-hour violation. We want to know the situation of law enforcement regarding this 24-hour issue. In our discussions in the subcommittee, the authorities promised to set up dump bins, and I want to know what's the situation with of enforcement of these dump bins. I think these bins would give tourists a chance if they have bought too much milk powder by accident. We have to be careful with donating these collected milk powder, because if any of these milk powder is problematic, we will have problems if recipient organizations consume these milk. Thank you for the question. I think the Customs and Excise Department can brief us more on part of the question. We have worked with voluntary organizations who donate food to people in need. We talked about problems Mr. Low has mentioned. We have agreed that from June we will set up, Lok Ma Chau and Lo Wu will set up in the Lok Ma Chau and Lo Wu spur lines. We will set up dump bins in these at these two control points, and the collected milk powder will be donated to voluntary organizations. On behalf of the Customs and Excise Department, I have some statistics for your reference. And we have had 489 prosecutions, and 37% have violated this 24-hour rule. And in April, in 482 prosecutions, only 49 or 10% of the cases are violations of the 24-hour rule. In May, there are 399 prosecutions, and 48 or 12% of the prosecutions have to do with the 24-hour rule. So we're seeing a downward trend on the number of violations of this rule. For Hong Kong residents and tourists, most of them are very clear on this 24-hour restriction. In our different promotion channels, including TV commercials, radio broadcasting, posters and banners, we have conveyed this 24-hour restriction across very clearly. In some of the violations, a lot of them are to do with multiple entries within the same day. A simple follow-up question. You talked about 9 possible locations for the dump bins. So now we have dump bins at 2 sites. Will you extend the bins to the other sites suggested? Mr. Philip Chan, we will see the results of these dump bins before devising a long-term strategy. Mr. To, I think the limit of 2 tins of milk powder is intended for self-use for people who cross the border for personal consumption. The purpose of this restriction it's not possible to consume 2 tins of milk powder within 24 hours. I think the purpose of this restriction is very clear. It's that the milk powder is for personal use. Once you have the restriction of 2 tins, it's not about your motivation for the legislation.
Well, for these 24 hours, the baby consumption factor doesn't exist. If you have other evidence, of course, this is subject to investigation. Now, when they check through the customs, the immigration department wouldn't issue them with a notice about the time that they clear the customs, and they have to memorize the time of departure. Now, you may catch them leaving short of 24 hours, then they are breaking the law if they have this baby formula on them. Now, if in a convincing case, say for instance, if they are just 1 minute short, then you may be too stringent, you may be too harsh, and my watch may tell the time which is slightly wrong, and my watch may be a little bit slower than actual time. So I think you ought to consider all these factors before instigating prosecution. I'm not sure what procedures you have if this person gets in and out of Hong Kong so many times, and he may say that 9 out of 10 times he didn't bring any tins of baby formula. It's just this once that he carries the baby formula. And I think that you ought to conduct very detailed investigation to ascertain the circumstances, to see whether there are any extenuating circumstances in terms of prosecution. Now, I don't think there is any compassion at all when it comes to consumption, because there is no way the baby can consume 2 tins within 24 hours. Secretary, let me make 2 points before I defer to my Customs and Excise colleagues. Now, this mechanism is not there to tackle parallel trading per se, because this is not against the law in Hong Kong. What we are tackling is to make sure that the parallel traders will not be diverting huge quantities of baby formula away from the supply chain. Like Mr. To said, the spirit of the law is technically they are against the law, but we should have faith in the judiciary that for this particular person who has flouted the law, the way he should be handled should be proportionate to the circumstances of the case. Mr. To, I'm not talking about the court, I'm talking about the Customs and Excise when it comes to investigation. If it is 1 minute short, maybe the Customs and Excise would choose not to prosecute, because there can be errors in the memory. Any discretion? Chairman. Well, when it comes to enforcement of the law, the Customs and Excise holds fast to the principle of acting in strict accordance with the law. Now, Mr. To referred to some specific cases maybe they are just 1 minute short of the 24-hour cycle. Now, in these circumstances, the Customs and Excise will examine the circumstances of the case. Now, if they miss the 24 hours just by a very short time, and there is no deliberate act to do so, then we will consult the DOJ, and then the DOJ would have regard to the circumstances and might consider not prosecuting this particular person. Can you give a list to the panel about the discretionary power being exercised and how the power was exercised for not prosecuting? Chairman. I'll liaise with the relevant division about the number of cases in which I would sought DOJ advice and prosecution was not instigated. Ms. Elena Wong and then Ms. Sid Ho. Chairman. There are many clashes today. I must apologize for not being here. I hope that the liquor licensing issue can be dealt with next time. A couple of points for the Secretary regarding the restriction order. The last paragraph of the paper, paragraph 13, the Labor Day holiday, the supply of baby formula is largely stable. Now, during the May Day holiday, did you find out about the supply situation regarding different brands, and did you receive any complaints? Second, about Customs and Excise enforcement, which was alluded to by Mr. Toh. Paragraph 5 says that if the Customs and Excise is unclear about the brands, the C&ED may ring up the hotline of the FHB for assistance. I'm not sure whether this hotline is going to be cancelled. From the end of the scrutiny period to the present moment, have the Customs and Excise called the hotline to seek assistance? Did you receive any assistance from the Customs and Excise, and how many times did they seek assistance? Third, there are some rumors. I emphasize rumors that the restriction order prompted the C.Y. Leung administration to issue a directive that all policy papers will have to assess the mainland reaction. So the restriction order is mainly to make sure that local parents will be able to purchase this infant formula. Now, there is a policy requirement mandated by C.Y. Leung to gauge a mainland reaction to the policies. Now, prior to the restriction order being rescinded, how do you assess, or how can you make sure that the supply will be good enough for local parents, and how are you going to assess, or how do you consider the mainland reaction? Secretary? Yes, the May Day holidays, the supply was stable. Now, we didn't have any particular tool to gauge that, but there are signs to make us understand that the supply has been stable. Number one, there has been no complaints. Second, the government 24-hour order hotline was still effective. Just because of the Golden Week holidays and the May Day holidays, there was not any scramble for the infant formula that prompted a lot of people to call through the hotline. That's why we cancelled the special hotline subsequently. Now, this is the hotline that we have cancelled. As far as I know, we're not cancelling the hotline for internal communications. As to the number of calls, perhaps the Deputy Secretary might wish to fill members in on the details. Third, the mainland perspective, the administration has always considered how best we can liaise better with the mainland from the FHB's point of view. When the restriction order was mooted, we didn't consider the mainland reaction. I'm referring to the sentiments of the mainland people. Now, what I was concerned about at the time was that people get the impression that we are targeting at the mainland people. Now, there are two types of mainland people. Some really do need to purchase these kind of products, but there are some other people who are involved in parallel trading. Now, we're not targeting at any mainland users. We are targeting at the parallel traders. We don't really want them to divert the baby formula away from the supply chain. But all this added up to a perception that they're being targeted. And I feel really bad about it myself. Now, even with this assessment, I wouldn't sacrifice the interests of the local parents. I will communicate with them to make them aware that we're not targeting at them. Mr. Philip Chen, Chairman. When Madam Wong referred to this hotline at the FHB, we did receive assistance from the Customs and Excise. Now, this hotline is there for the Customs and Excise officers if they are not quite sure from the tin about the baby formula. Then we get in touch with the supplier and get hold of supplementary information for them to make the assessment. As to the details and number of cases, I will take up the information for members. Ms. Sit Ho and then Mr. Paul J. Ms. Sit Ho. Chairman, thank you. The infant formula is the main nutrition for the babies other than breast milk. Now, if we can maintain the supply the way we maintain the supply for rice, then this should be considered. But this restriction order is an erroneous move. That's why I propose the sunset clause. On April the 17th, we couldn't put it to the vote. I was really incensed about it, but I'm sure that Mr. Raymond Chan didn't act in cahoots with the administration. I'm prepared to listen to believe him. But in fact, the government does have the obligation to present the amendment to us again, because during the scrutiny period, they were prepared to move some amendments to remove all the enforcement grey areas. But they took advantage of that opportunity because we couldn't put it to the vote, and they evaded their responsibility. And subsequently, what they did was to put together a set of internal guidelines with illustrations about the kind of products to be controlled. I think a piece of legislation should be made clear to everybody, not just to the Customs and Excise. That's why we asked the Secretary to disclose the internal guidelines with all the pictures and so on, so that we know what we are trying to control. I think this is in line with the spirit of the law. A better course of action is for the Secretary to present the amendments properly to the Legislative Council and gazette it for LegCo to scrutinize. A sunset clause is meant to be neutral. We're not saying that with the sunset clause being in place, the parallel traders will be back with a vengeance. Now, we're saying that if there can be no agreement reached with the administration about the supply, then after the sunset clause, you can tighten it up. You can scale it back from 2 tins to 1, or you can restrict the export altogether. it is not the case that with the sunset clause that the parallel traders can be back with a vengeance. It's just that we like to have a deadline for everybody to resolve the problem. Now, the mainland population takes up 1/5 of the world's population. If they scramble for products, then Hong Kong will be running out. New Zealand and other countries will be running out of the products. If I may put this to the Secretary, if the situation deteriorates, other than restricting export of the products, are there any other ways to make sure that local babies would be able to have the baby formula? It's just like the previous secretary, when the pork was tight in supply, he tried to bring in the frozen pork from Thailand. Do you have similar arrangements?
Thank you, Chairman, and Mrs. Ho's question. I think for any legislation, no legislation can be 100% clear or unclear. When the government first tried to improve this legislation, we hoped to optimize the legislation. I think the definition we placed reflects our scope of coverage of the legislation. However, I do not think our current definition is problematic. Sorry, let me interrupt. In reality, the Customs and Excise Department the frontline staff have shown that it's very difficult to enforce the law. So why don't we disclose such guidelines to the public and not just the frontline staff of Customs and Excise? The guidelines are internal information, so we have prepared a separate leaflet for the public, and it serves the same purpose of explaining our regulation, our legislation. I think that the third question is very difficult. What do we do when the overall supply is inadequate? My view is, if the shortage becomes so severe that that locals cannot get hold of the milk powder, originally the percentage of local consumption demand of milk powder is very, very small. It's less than 10 million tins, 10 million kilograms. If we further promote breastfeeding, the local demand might even be smaller. Might be even smaller. A lot of the milk powder we import are taken away through parallel trading activities. I think you're going too far, Secretary. Mrs. Sid Ho is talking about the worst case scenario. What would you do? Will you adopt similar practices as commodities like rice? I think this is what she means. The government should think about the worst case scenario. I believe that if the suppliers can do what we said to ensure a stable supply for Hong Kong people, I think we have a great safety margin. Well, according to my understanding, Secretary means he has not envisaged such bad situations. Mr. Porcher, Secretary, I think you are misleading us on the issue, on the original definition of powder formula. The original definition is adequate to in the relevant in drawing up the relevant policies. The definition has created a lot of confusion and prosecutions, which for inadvertent people. I think are there any cases where people bring carry powder formula across the border inadvertently and Secretary, when we mix different values of Hong Kong, how do we draw the line? For example, China-Hong Kong conflicts. Do we go with legislation or bureaucracy? Do you have other views or considerations? You're damaging the legislative foundation of that is the cornerstone of Hong Kong. Right now, you seem to have forgotten about the importance of our legal system, and things are not just up to you. You have to follow the law. You have forgotten about the spirits of the law, and Hong Kong has paid the price of this blunder. And you said you have informed the World Trade Organization. Do you have any details or documents? Are you actually doing what you told us? I think you're damaging a lot of the basic values of Hong Kong. Will you report on the figures by the Customs and Excise Department? For the question, I hope our colleagues from the Customs and Excise Department can respond. So far, we have not encountered cases on the definition of milk powdered formula. And on the values of Hong Kong, I can give you a very clear answer. Is that we want to ensure that the parents of Hong Kong can have a stable supply of Hong Kong, and I do not mean to compromise the spirit of the law. I think all these can be achieved within legal constraints. This is not just the view of the government. We have consulted legal advice. The original definition reflects the purpose of our legislation. For the second question, I want to invite Mr. Low from the Trade and Industry Department. We have reported to WTO. The member's question is can you share the documents submitted to WTO can be shared with us? The Secretariat will follow up on this. Ms. Mack, on the 17th of April, I was prepared to ask the question. And I waited, but the meeting was cancelled. with the filibustering, the meeting has been delayed till today. Since we have already experienced such a long delay, what we want to know, what the businessmen want to know, is that when the government evaluates the measure in October, I think a lot of merchants would want to know when they can resume the sales of powdered formula. Let's look forward. You have please make it clear how the merchants, how the suppliers and sellers can will know when they can resume the selling. We're not talking about pharmacies. We're talking about suppliers. Just now, what Raymond Chan asked was very valid. I think the restriction on milk powder is temporary. The key is in the coming October, we have to ensure that the long-term supply of the milk powder is stable, to avoid any trading for profits, trading activities for profits. We will set up a commission we want the entire industry, including logistics, academia, consumer, suppliers. We want to keep everyone on the same page, and everyone can work together on the mechanism. I've always explained that it's not a very simplistic issue about supply chain. We will ensure that the mechanism works. For instance, we will appoint consultants. We have to look at the agreements between suppliers and their mother companies. On the daily replenishment, we will actually we will evaluate the frequencies of their replenishment and what they have actually done to enhance the frequencies of the deliveries. We will ensure that they can actually replenish their stocks daily. If you say you will increase the manpower by 50% to man the hotline, this is not enough, especially if we can potentially receive 200 to 300 calls a day. Secretary, apart from the stress tests you mentioned, to be very honest, if you have been involved in district work, the issues with stock is that the reason is that the pharmacies have no stock in their stores. And in some cases, the powdered formula which reach big supermarkets, and they are taken away immediately after they arrive at the supermarkets. So how can we ensure that small and medium companies can involve in the fair trading of milk powder? In this case, for smaller retail points, they have sent representatives in to join the discussions. And small retailers might join hands together to and find a place to store their stock. I think you have to pay extra attention to the small retailers. Members have from the first round have finished their questions.
認真
Secretary, this import and export amendment regulation 2013, we have seen two unusual situations. Now, even if this is a negative vetting approach, it came into effect before all the scrutiny period was over, and this is highly surprising. The chairman and the vice chairman of the House Committee did make a representation with the chief secretary. Mrs. Carrie Lam, the CS, also said that this is a rather unique situation, and she had to consider how this is going to be handled in future. Second, some members pointed out that in the definition of infant formula or powdered formula, the government realized that there were problems. And I think you were behaving like an opportunist. Since the council couldn't complete the scrutiny within the 4+3 weeks period, and we couldn't move any amendments, and you took the opportunity not to present the amendments, and you are forcing the Hong Kong people to accept a second best. And this is our observation about the restriction order, which is highly unusual. This unusual phenomenon is really storming the rule of Hong Kong, the rule of law in Hong Kong. Secretary, I'm not sure whether you consulted the DOJ. One of the major principles about the rule of law is that you must have objective criteria. The law enforcer and the subject of the law enforcement must be looking at the same set of criteria. I am not sure how you're going to respond to the 2 points that I made, and you are telling us that you would publish some pamphlets for the users and members of the public, and you're not going to show us the version used by the enforcement agencies. Is it the view that you have received from the DOJ? Secretary? Chairman, about the enforcement, the effective date, it was in a very urgent situation that we proposed this. I agree with the CS that this is a unique situation. We don't really want to do it, but I am sure that members also remember that people did cast doubt on the commencement date. They thought that it was too late. So this is a rather unique situation. Second, now, during the scrutiny period, the administration put forward the amendments. Our attitude has remained unchanged. When we moved the amendments, we said that that represented the government's policy intent, and there was some possibility that there would be some improvements. While I respect the views of the chairman, but that doesn't represent our intention. We have been working in conjunction with the DOJ to make sure that what we are doing would be in line with the spirit of the law. Secretary, now you are an opportunist, prepared to accept a second best. Now this is the perception that people have, and the law enforcement agencies are using this particular new set of guidelines. So how can you shake off this perception? Mr. Lin. Chairman, these internal guidelines should best be for the consumption of the officers themselves instead of being made available to the public. We do have internal guidelines for the officers to enforce the law. There are some details to do with the operation of the department. It's not appropriate for us to disclose it to the public. Let me put this to you. Now, if the law enforcer and the subject of the law enforcement are reading different versions, then it will not be good enough. I hope that you would consider this. We have overrun the time. I understand that Mr. Tommy Cheung and Mr. Vincent Fang are very concerned about this, so I'll let them have another go. 2 minutes, please. Mr. Tommy Cheung. I'll be quick, Chairman. I can get this across in the first round. Now, Mr. Secretary, now you understand that there is no shortage of baby formula. Maybe people can buy 2 brands, Fizzle and Mead Johnson. You must be aware of that. Don't tell me that you don't know about it. Now, I don't think you can, by any stretch of imagination, say that there is a shortage. If I may put this to the Secretary, I'm keen to read the documents that you presented to the WTO and also their reply. I have reason to believe that you have flouted GATT Article 11 of the WTO, because you are prohibiting the baby formula from being exported to another place without full justification, unless there is a shortage. But you cannot prove that there was any shortage. And Article 11 suggests that this is only there can only be a temporary prohibition. We wonder why you have this permanent arrangement. That's why we like to have a sunset clause, because you are really violating the GATT provision. That if you're lucky enough to get away with no criticism from the WTO, it's only because China didn't raise any objection. I mean, if it were for another country, then I'm sure that you have been criticized severely. Secretary? Well, all along we have been saying that it's all a matter of the supply chain problem. Mr. Vincent Fang. Chairman, I heard from the Secretary about the stress test that is being conducted. Now, it is not reasonable for them to increase the capacity of the hotline by 50%. Now, when you designated the hotline, you had a lot of lines. I think 30, 40 lines at the time. Now, they said that they're going to increase 50% of the capacity. That they have 40 lines, and they will be increasing by 20. During the stress test, you may be making hundreds of calls through the hotline. And I don't think this is a good enough stress test. I think we have to let it run its own course. And you said that you would guarantee supply for the local babies. You're not trying to tackle the parallel trading. And the supply, a quarter would be for Hong Kong users, and 3/4 would be for the mainland users. I think you have to make sure that this 25% or 1,000 kilograms of baby formula will certainly be available for the local babies. You will try your best to guarantee that this is happening, because if the demand is on the rise in the mainland, if you can guarantee 1,000 kilograms for the local babies, it should be all right. You mentioned the company in Hong Kong and the parent companies. If they are showing a drastic increase in supply, then they are true to their pledges. Secretary, well, I go along with Mr. Vincent Fang's statement. You mentioned guaranteeing local supply. I mean, this is precisely my intention, and that's what I said earlier on. Well, as long as we can guarantee the supply of 1,000 kilometers, it would be all right. Okay, then, members, that brings us to the end of the first item about the restriction, the so-called restriction order. Let's move on to the next item, supply of live cattle in Hong Kong. Time is running short. I'd like to remind members that I'm going to exercise my executive authority to extend the meeting to 6:45, and if we need more time, I will consult members again. There is a change of personality. Well, I'd just like to take questions. Are you going to say anything? Well, would you like to say something? Why don't you say something in brief? Well, very briefly. I'm not going to talk about the report. I'm sure members have read it themselves. I am not the one who is most familiar with the report, but basically the report has confirmed that there is discrepancies in the prices. The consultant is of the view that there can be diverse views regarding the interpretation of the price discrepancies. Some said that this is the result of a monopoly. Some said that there are factors in the mainland market that lead to this, but basically it is a bit of both. To open up the market may bring down the prices. But in this particular situation, because of all these factors at play, there may be unique mainland factors that may not result in any price reduction because of the opening up of the market. So by opening up the market, we may not be able to guarantee that the price will come down. Because there is a price discrepancy there, we are prepared to try and explore this idea of opening up the market. So I can tell members that we have already started liaising with the mainland authorities about this. Well, right. Members would like to put questions. Wong Kwok Heng, Tommy Cheung, Helena Wong. 5 minutes, please. Mr. Wong. Chairman, thank you. Tabled in front of us is a written submission from this alliance on fresh beef retailers, and also the Development Opportunity Institute. Now, first of all, as the Secretary said, there can be the pricing problem. Now we have Ng Fung Hong as the sole distributor, and there is a situation of price monopoly. Now the trade has made available this piece of information, which I can pass on to the Secretary. Now, the wholesale price is 4,000 odd dollars, but the retail price, the source price is $3,000. The price differential is about $1,000 to the tune of 50%. Now, let's say 5 pickle at 65 per day. The price differential can be as much as $516,000 per day, or $50 million per month. So this monopoly will yield handsome profits for the distributor. That's point number one. Second, from the early part of last year to the end of last year, breeding beef has seen 6 price hikes, and marbled beef 8 price hikes, and according to Fung Hong, there may be further price hikes if we do not change this monopoly on the supply of beef in Hong Kong. Then the people of Hong Kong will be held over the barrel, and they don't really have any bargaining power at all because there is no competition in the market. According to the trade, at the present moment, other than Fung Hong that can import beef, there is another company that can also do so, and that is Guangnan Company. But they can only get a quota from Fung Hong, about 300 cattle per month. They may be able to import 300 live cattle. The number varies, but the pricing would be dictated by Fung Hong, and that's unreasonable. If they can bring in a cheaper live cattle, why is it that we cannot open the market up to Guangnan Hong as well? Now, that way we're going to have two competitors that will be competing in the pricing. Why is it that Fung Hong will be able to dictate the pricing? The cattle brought in by Guangnan Hong will be dictated by Fung Hong, and they can pocket the difference. On Hong Kong Island, the purchasing power is a little bit higher. Because of this surge in beef prices, 4 retailers have already folded. Because beef is fetching more than $100 per catty, and it's very, very difficult for them to survive. So the trade would like to urge the administration to open up the supply of the live cattle in Hong Kong. I know that the secretary is doing something. My question is, how soon will this happen? Chairman, the trade also asked me to arrange for a public hearing next time so that they would be able to come and tell the stories. And they would very much like to make representation with the authority and the honourable members. Finally, Chairman, if I may move a motion, I get Mr. Vincent Fang supporting my motion. My motion is to urge the administration to open up the import market for beef and come up with a timetable as soon as possible. I hope that these will be addressed later on. I look forward to a reply from the administration regarding what they're going to do and the timetable in this regard, please.
Thank you, Mr. Wong's questions. I agree that since last year, the price hikes have been very significant. The accumulated increase in price is very, very high. I would not comment on the different statistics offered by the trade or our consultants. I would not say our consultants are doing will obtain the best source of information. I think it's not fair to compare. However, we have a common conclusion that there is a price discrepancy. We are also concerned about the consumption of beef by locals. We have done a lot of work to ensure that locals still have a lot of choices in consuming beef, and we will certainly try our best. Live cattle is only one type of food. We also care about the livelihoods of live cattle traders and sellers. I will not go into an argument whose statistics are more accurate, but we have started discussions with mainland authorities. But please understand that we are the buyer while they are the seller. They are the sellers, and even if we want to buy beef, we need people who are willing to sell beef. In terms of expectations for the timeline, we cannot control the timeline, but we will certainly make a first step. And for the things I cannot answer, they depend on two-way interactions. it depends on the trade, and I hope the members can understand. Mr. Tommy Chang, thank you, Chairman. Months ago, I have discussed with the trade. At that time, I said it's important to compare prices. Sellers would say they are losing money, and that's why they have to raise prices. So I think it's important to compare prices, and the Secretary has done his job. And the results have shown that Hong Kong's live cattle is more expensive than places like Guangzhou and Shenzhen. At that time, I told him I don't mind helping, but he declined my help. Now we have the results, and we see the price discrepancies, which I think is okay. Right now, when we just have a single supplier, Feng Hong, can we ask them to show us their accounts to see how much money they're making or losing? If you want to open up the live cattle market, I think I agree with you that everyone shouldn't expect too much. Do we have enough sellers once we open up the market? If we look at the issue with live pigs, we have to be cautious on the opening of opening up the markets. No matter what, you should take reference from the market of live pigs. Some urgent work needs to be done in terms of live cattle. Recently, I had a hot pot dinner outside. Well, I'm not talking about the prices of the beef. The quality is also very bad. So I think opening up the market is something I will certainly agree. I'm not sure if I can still be here, but at 6:45, I will talk about Mr. Vincent Fang's proposal, and this is something the Liberal Party agrees with. Well, the beef merchants might not like what I'm saying, but we have had experience where when we have chilled beef, they might taste pretty good. I'm not sure why, but our previous term secretary proposed selling these chilled beef at one single supermarket. I know there are technical challenges with chilled beef, such as the period of storage, but I still think we should give the Hong Kong people more choices. At that time, I supported the idea of chilled pork in terms of taste or food premises or the public. I don't think there's a big difference as opposed to the case of chicken. I think chilled chicken do not taste quite as well. We have to think about why nobody work on chilled beef. Do we still test drive the sales in one single supermarket or what? Thank you, Mr. Cheng's question. I agree with most of your questions. In terms of expectation, I need to reiterate one point. I can only say that we have started discussions with mainland authorities. This is not a one-way decision. This is something I want to emphasize. Well, I hope we have results very soon. In terms of prices, I think we need to be cautious about this. On the timeline, again, this is not a one-way decision. On chilled beef, I will explore the issue. But I want to mention from the FEHD's perspective, beef and chicken are very different. Most people can tell the difference between live chicken meat and chilled chicken meat. Chicken meat, but for beef, the taste of chilled and frozen beef tastes quite similar for me. But certainly we will explore the suggestion. Mrs. Helena Wang, thank you, Chairman. On opening up the market, the Democratic Party agrees with this idea. In 2005, when we talked about fair competition, we welcome any proposals on anti-monopoly. The government said they are open on the idea of opening up the live cattle market. Can this be initiated with solely the sole agreement of the Hong Kong government? Does it have to pass the Ministry of Commerce? Does it need approval from the mainland Ministry of Commerce? Can the SAR government make an independent decision? I think we have to respect the place of origin. Even if we want to buy cattle from them, we have to see if they're willing to sell it. So it's not a one-way decision. So how do we initiate this new proposal? Is it a direct discussion between the Bureau and mainland authorities? I have another question. Mr. Tommy Chang has mentioned, what choices do we have in terms of beef? Fresh beef, 6% of the beef supplied is fresh beef, 4% are chilled beef, and most of them are frozen beef. On chilled beef, will we encourage consumption of chilled beef so that the percentage can go up? We will certainly explore this issue. However, we have to look at the type of meat. I eat a lot of beef. Chilled beef and frozen beef taste basically the same. Sometimes aged beef tastes even better. We will actively explore the possibility of promoting chilled beef. However, we shouldn't think that without chilled beef we cannot manage. Our goal is to give Hong Kong people more choices. My bigger concern is the trade, the operators in the trade. Any follow-up questions, Ms. Wang? One more question. You have been trying to explain the different reasons between the price hikes, and that this had nothing to do with the monopoly of Feng Hong. You are talking about a decrease in supply from China, and you talked about factors like increase in transportation costs, etc. China has become more affluent and more people are consuming beef. If these are the factors behind the price hikes, do you mean that opening up the market would not help lower the prices, as Mr. Wong Kwok-heng said? what you said, I partly agree. However, I have never spoken on behalf of Feng or other suppliers. However, we need to manage expectations. Each market is unique and it has its own characteristics. If when the supply goes up, prices can go down. If a particular market is affected by different factors, if the demand in China goes up, our bargaining power might be compromised, and there are a lot of factors, a lot of issues, quality issues, quarantine issues. These are all things which would drive up the prices. I do not intend to make explanations on behalf of suppliers, but there are a lot of factors that even if the market is opened, prices might not necessarily go down. But given the price discrepancies, I think it's reasonable to try new solutions.
Well, Secretary, I don't think we should waste too much time. There are two more members for the first round, Professor Joseph Lee and then Mr. Raymond Chen. Chairman, the paper refers to the prices. There is discrepancy in prices, and opening up the market may not be of help. According to the paper, year before last, we had an average of 75 cattle per day. Now it is 68. The prices are due to supply and demand. If the market is opened up, are we still having 75 versus 68 cattle per day? Do we have a demand that outstrips supply? Now, if, let's say, the cattle costs $10,000 each, then nobody's buying it. It's got nothing to do with opening up the market. If we open up the market to more players, maybe we still have 75. The paper shows the number of cattle being imported. Can we sell them all, or did any of them end up being chilled or frozen beef? I mean, if we open up the market, are we going to see any rigging of the market? Now, there may be players coming in, but they're not playing any role, and they may be colluding to bring in 65 cattle per day, and the prices do not change at all. Now, we'd like to have the assumption that by opening up the market, that the prices will come down. But if we open up the market, they rig the market, and the prices will remain unchanged. Do you have any mechanism to make sure that nothing like this will ever happen? Secretary, well, the supply is getting smaller. I'm not asking about the smaller supply. Now, you have 75 and 68 cattle per day. Are they all sold out? Well, I'm coming to that. Each day, I'm looking at how many come in and how many is sold and how many left over. Now, the cattle are not like chickens. Now, when the cattle are sold, they will be slaughtered. The remaining ones will be sold tomorrow and day after tomorrow. And they are not going to slaughter them all and chill or freeze them. Now, the reason why there is a small supply, it is because it is more expensive and people bring in less. Your second question, if now, we haven't come to that yet. If we come to the stage where there are more than one player, then I would have the duty to make sure that there is a mechanism in place. Now, in theory, with more players, the prices will come down, because if there is a monopoly held by one player, the price can be monopolized. When the cattle are brought into Hong Kong, they will have the whole say over the prices. But if there are more players, then the buyers, the traders, would have more choices, and that would have a stabilizing effect on the prices. If we allow import by the players, we have to make sure that they are using the quota, and we're keeping a monitoring eye on a daily basis. Well, the question has not been addressed. Now, maybe you have two players, and you have the traders can have more choices, but they may be colluding to fix the prices. Now, second, the secretary said that the cattle are sold differently to the chickens. They may bring in 65, and because of the high prices, there is less of a demand. Now, if we open up the market, there would be more supply, and the prices would be coming down. Now, have you got any statistics about the consumption of fresh beef in Hong Kong? If you find that the demand is not that keen, then even you open up the market, it doesn't make any difference, because people may be consuming more chilled beef. And Secretary, well, the paper has pointed out that only 6% consume fresh beef. If there are two players that are colluding to fix the price, to form a cartel, then it is against the competition ordinance. Well, I'm not sure about that, but I mean, that's beside the point. Mr. Raymond Chan, 2 points and 1 question. First of all, I support Mr. Wong Kwok Heng's motion. I feel that by opening up the market, it may not help with keeping down the prices, but I don't think we should sit back and do nothing despite this prospect. The administration should explore this possibility. Second, the Secretary was roundly criticized for encouraging breastfeeding when there was a shortage of formula milk. Now, I think it makes sense for you to encourage people to consume more vegetables. I'm fond of beef. I quit eating beef for 10 years, but now I'm eating again. It is very environmentally friendly to consume beef, because per kilogram of beef, they are producing 27 kilograms of greenhouse gas. So I think the Department of Health should encourage people to consume more vegetables and vegetarian food to change their behavior. Now, with the surge in beef price, then people are trying to pass off fake beef balls as the genuine one. Now, what are you going to do to tackle this problem, Secretary? Now, there are some reports that said that some beef products, i.e. beef balls, that they contain virtually no beef at all. It contains other kind of meat. Now, this is actually in violation of the Trade Description Ordinance. Now, the Center for Food Safety is liaising with the Customs and Excise, and they will be conducting investigation. Well, there is also the Public Health and Municipal Services Ordinance that would govern this as well. Right, thank you, Chairman. Mr. Raymond Chan. Well, this is what is exposed by the media about the fake beef ball and fake beef products. Well, the CFS will be looking at the situation, not just what is reported by the media. Well, the CFS will conduct an investigation in this regard. All right, so much for the first round. I think we basically have taken the words out of my mouth, and let's proceed to Mr. Wong's motion. All right, you want to read that out? Thank you, Chairman. The motion reads like this: we urge the administration to open up the import market for cattle, live cattle, and they should come up with a timetable as soon as possible. Thank you. All right, let's have a show of hands. For those in favor, please raise their hands. Myself included, all in favor, 5. Did I miss out on anything at all? Anything else? Chairman, in future when we bring this matter up again, yes, Mr. Wong suggested that there should be a public hearing as suggested by, thank you, Secretary, thank you very much, as suggested by the trade. Any comments, please? Agreed? No problem. Mr. Peter Cheung. Well, it's fine by me. Should we invite Feng Hong as well? Definitely, that will be the main player. And Kwong Lam Hong as well, perhaps. And the agricultural organization. Right, the Secretariat will have a word with Mr. Wong about the guest list. We'll work out the time and let members know. Thank you all very much for coming. Meeting adjourned.